Hey. Okay. So, okay, but yeah. Now you're in before me, but I think we had the wrong link. Do you want to go and come out again quickly? Sorry, we were on, and then when you started the other link, it booted us off.
You tell me, what do I need to do?
Do you want to just get off and on again?
Sure. Does everyone need to get off and on?
Yeah. We've
right.
just, or you can share it on Facebook. But
All right, let me see if I can just share. I can share it from here.
Okay, cool. Go down the bottom, hit share on Facebook, and go make sure you choose the page. Meanwhile, everybody on here, so Dr. Bart's going to share it on Facebook now.
Should have group event, page imbalance. We'll see what happens here. All right, and this is going out to the Dr. Bart page, I believe.
Have you got to choose the Dr. Bart page?
Okay.
Cool. Everybody who's on, otherwise, I wonder if there is a bit.
It's live.
Okay, live on the Dr. Bart page. Sweet.
I believe so.
Okay. Rhonda, let me bring you in here.
She was having some technical difficulties a moment ago as well. So hopefully, there she is. I think she might be on her phone tonight.
Okay. Rhonda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm here. All good now.
Awesome. Good to see you.
I had a little Wi-Fi issue, but we got it. We figured it out. So we're all good now.
Awesome. Tech trouble is part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It is. Awesome. All right. Well, let's now that we've got everyone on and we're sharing on Facebook, let's get started. I always like to start the Health Made Simple show every week by introing our host, Dr. Bart. So Dr. Bart has been a healthcare provider for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, acupuncture, kinesiology, nutrition, and supplementation, along with functional medicine out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrove Beach, Florida. He's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a virtual health program for entrepreneurs and executives wanting to take their health to the next level. So Dr. Bart has worked with thousands of people to maximize their health around the world and always provides so much value for our Health Made Simple show every week. This week, though, we have a very special guest, and we're so grateful for you jumping on, Rhonda. Thank you so much for being here. So Dr. Rhonda is a proven and trusted leader in the wellness arena, and is on a mission to change the way healthcare practitioners deliver functional care to their patients. As a nationally known speaker and passionate author, Dr. Rhonda continues to refine her clinical skills, working with patients virtually while providing support for other clinicians through her online educational platform that delivers practitioners a simplified approach to health and wellness. We love that. We're all about simplified approach here on the Health Made Simple show. So she is a well-respected for her practical and down-to-earth marketing strategies, helping clinicians clarify their message and create a consistent online brand. So her extensive knowledge, coupled with an outgoing personality, a vibrant sense of humor, make her one of the most loved and sought after functional medicine educators and business coaches in the United States. So we are really excited to have you on, and we're excited to dive into our topic of hormones tonight. So thank you again for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really happy to be here. I'm always happy to hang out with my friend Bart.
Well, before we even get started, I got to let the whole audience know kind of like how we know each other.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I got to, because the truth is that I've probably learned more from you than I learned in my 4 years of my school. That's the truth. Yeah. So for those who were watching, you know, my staff knows all about Dr. Ronda. That's where I learn all my good stuff. And Rhonda's really the teacher of teachers. And that's what I love about you so much. And you've always been such a helpful, like literally a helpful hand, and then also a great friend. And one of the things I love about the most is that when we were first starting to get to know each other, you let me bring one of my dogs to an 8-hour seminar.
Yes,
Yes.
I loved it. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So I think we were over in like Orlando or something like that.
Mhm.
And we were, man, we could have been talking about hormones for that matter. I think we were.
Probably.
Actually. And I had a dog with me the entire time and just sat underneath the bench, and it was cool. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for being here, hon. I appreciate you over there on the West Coast. This is probably the biggest topic, quite frankly. I think that practitioners like myself and yourself that we just deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I think really just for our audience to just as we dive in tonight, because we're gonna go everywhere. We're gonna tackle every question, all the hot ones no one wants to touch, all that good stuff. We both been practicing a long time. Have you seen this hormone imbalances escalate over the last couple of years, or have you seen it start to get better and get less and less people have hormone imbalances?
And it's a good question. And sadly, the answer is that the number of hormone imbalances, and I would use that term very loosely. Like it's a big, huge umbrella. But I would say sadly that the number of women and men that I see, and even children that have hormone imbalances is escalating. I couldn't even begin to guess at the percent, but what used to take 3-4 months to fix now is taking a year to correct. And it's sad, but there's a lot of reasons for that, but to answer your question, it's really gone up and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I kind of knew the answer to that. And the reason I really asked it is I want our listeners, especially the listeners that are paying attention tonight and wanting to learn from us, especially from you, Rhonda, because you are the hormone expert in our country, no doubt, that maybe to be patient and understand that it's a process.
Yeah.
As much as there's people out there waving flags saying this is the magic, wand over here, this is the magic pill, the lotion, the herb, whatever it may be, that understand that hormones is multifaceted. So with that being said, I want to dive deep in the sense of when the hormone imbalances, when are they really starting?
They're starting in utero. This is what's happening in utero. And in large part, and you know this, but in large part, it has a lot to do with the exposure that mom has while she's carrying the baby. But you could even take it a step beyond that and look at what her exposure is before she ever gets pregnant. Because those xenohormones or the environmental hormones are constantly clogging up the system. And they work like in the body. If a hormone was the key to a lock, like a lock on your front door, and you have a hormone, let's say it's one of the 3 estrogens, and you stick that hormone, that key into the lock, it should turn the lock of the cell where that hormone is interacting. It should turn the lock, and that would make the cell have the right action. What happens is these environmental chemicals are like the key that isn't quite cut right. It has a little cut profile. It's not cut quite right. It's kind of there, but kind of not there. And you stick it in the lock and it gets jammed. And so now the cell is getting this altered signal, like someone's trying to get in, or are they not breaking in? Or are they getting in? Or am I hearing that message? Am I not hearing that message? And the cell gets turned on, turned off, turned on, turned off. And it starts to dysregulate the way that the brain interacts with the liver and the hormones in the bloodstream and the ovaries and the prostate and the testes. And then then it's a 52 car pileup. And so it takes time to start extracting those cars and figuring out which keys are in the locks that are gumming up the system, so to speak, in order to get that interference cleared out so that we can get to the root problem and then fix it. So I absolutely believe it has so much to do with exposure before women ever get pregnant. And then when they are not paying attention and that exposure continues while they're pregnant, then we see these little ones that are born with hormone imbalances or the potential for them later on.
And I think that's almost a crazy concept to think that children are born with hormone imbalances, and yet I'm hoping that tonight really wakes up our people's eyes. I can remember a day, man, it seems like yesterday, like a decade ago, quite frankly, that maybe a little longer, but when a woman had infertility, they'd come into my chiropractic office, and I would adjust their sacrum, adjust their atlas, and just somewhere in that parasympathetic activity where like T6 to T10, boom, they'd go home, do their thing, and they'd get pregnant. That's how easy it used to be to help people with infertility. Nowadays, whoa. So with that being said, let's you hit on so many things I want to talk about. I want to talk about the liver because I think that is completely lost when it comes to people taking care of hormones. But let's back up a little bit because this is a thing that I see a lot right now with young women when I'm taking their histories, and it just makes me go, oh no, and that is birth control. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about birth control. Let's be honest here. Let's just, because there's literally millions of young women that are on birth control. Let's be real with it. Let's chat about it a little bit here.
Big topic, and one that most women kind of don't want to hear about, especially if they're using birth control for contraception. And there's two reasons that you would use birth control. One is to manage symptoms, like for instance with PCOS or some other functional disorder. But the other reason would be to, avoid conception. So there are multiple problems with birth control: nutrient depletion, dysregulation of the way that the brain communicates with the ovaries. So basically it kind of puts you into a pseudo state of pregnancy, or an altered state of pregnancy. Basically it signals the brain that, hey, everything's good down here. We don't need any eggs to pop out of the ovaries, because it's kind of like we're already sort of there, but you're not. And so it alters the way that the brain communicates with the ovaries. When that happens, then that brain communication, this is like the control central, right? This is like the central switching station. And when the switching station doesn't work for the brain ovaries, it doesn't work for the brain thyroid, it doesn't work for the brain adrenals, it doesn't work for the brain pancreas, and it doesn't work for the brain liver either. So when we're on birth control for contraception, we've not only messed up, like it's like having chatter in the line all the time. If you pick up the phone, you call someone and it's like that all the time. So how in the world are your hormones going to be right when you can't even hear, because there's so much static in the line? And that's what those birth control hormones do. The second thing they do is, because they're altering the way that communication is happening, the liver doesn't get the right message, and it then begins to accumulate the toxins from the environment. So things like plastics, things like, anything that has a smell. So if you shop at, what is that? Bed, I always get it confused. Bath and Body Works, is that what it is?
That's one of them. There's Bath.
Yeah. Victoria's Secret, all the smelly things that have all the candles and the lotions, like apple, pear, cucumber crap, all that stuff, all those smells, all those chemicals are going in the body. The liver gets so congested and full that then the hormone imbalances can't get cleared out. And I know that's kind of a big conversation, but think of the liver like a filter. And if the liver is gummed up, then any hormones that need to get cleared through the filter, just like the oil filter in your car, if it's gummed up, then the oil just stays gunky, because it can't get through that oil filter, because the oil filter's clogged and full. And the liver's just like that, as it has to do with hormones. So there's a lot there. I know, sorry, but you asked the question, my friend. Done.
Rhonda, it's such an important thing, though, because I'll talk to young women about cleaning up their liver, and they'll think, well, I don't drink. And that's the concept, out there, in our society, thinking that the only way our livers get polluted is if we eat or drink bad food. A lot of the people that I work with, they're cleaning up their diets. They're doing better and better jobs, better than the average person. That missing link there, and you said it earlier, you said exogenous hormones and exogenous hormone disruptors. And these folks, these are the chemicals that we're talking about, that these come into your body and they disrupt our hormones. And then the challenges really begin. So you're probably not a huge fan of using birth control for acne either, I'm guessing. Yeah.
There's an herb that your listeners probably are familiar with, and it's an herb called chaste tree. CHASTE, and then tree, like a tree. Chaste tree. It's also known as Vitex. And chaste tree is an amazing herb that helps to not only regulate that female hormone cycle, it helps with this up here, and it also helps with the ovaries, but chaste tree is exceptional for hormone-related acne, like male acne, female acne. So we think of chaste tree sometimes as just for women, but as it has to do with acne, it's a home run. So why use birth control when you can use something like that? Now, if you're using birth control to prevent contraception, then you know, we can use condoms for that. And I know that's no fun. It's like it's a game spoiler. That's what it is. I get it. But it sure is a lot healthier for you to do that from a woman's perspective than it would be to use oral contraceptives to prevent a pregnancy.
So a wise woman once told me if I used that for my patients that had acne, male or female, and I used that chase tree and then I combined it with something called wheat germ oil, that it was like a home run.
Home run every time.
Yeah. So I've been doing that now, probably, Rhonda, for like 8-9 years, and male or female, especially the teenagers that come in with the acne, those two combined, even, and granted, I'm always trying to clean up their diets, but even if they don't come out with a perfect diet, that it's such a home run solution for them. And I love using those things because it's just nature's way of healing things up. All right. So let's go through a kind of a conversation that I end up with almost on a daily basis now in my clinic. So a female come in and say, hey, listen, I just went to my other doctor. I've been gaining weight, a little irritable, not the best version of myself, putting on some pounds around the waist, and they tested all my hormones and they found out what was wrong with me. The reason I'm gaining all my weight is I have hypothyroidism and I have low progesterone. So he gave me these. And so you think that is the right direction right now? And listen, I say that gently because a lot of my clients, a lot of the women that are on here, I love you. And you know that we always have these conversations saying, listen, I get it. Just because it's low, just forcing it high doesn't help. So maybe you can just kind of add to that conversation right there.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about, if it's okay with you, I would like to really hone in on progesterone a little bit. Is it okay if I take a little bit of an overview about how the female cycle works?
Absolutely. I think that'd be perfect.
Okay. So this gives some context for how our bodies work. Now, we have, in a female reproductive cycle, we have 2 phases. So there's the first phase and the second phase. In a perfect world, those 2 phases are 14 days each, and that gives us a 28-day cycle, okay? 28 to 30 days, 31 days, perfect. We love it. But we're just going to call it 14 or 28-day cycle. So 14 in the first half, 14 in the second half. During that first half of the cycle, there's a pituitary hormone up here. Remember I said from the switching station, this hormone, FSH, gets released, and it tells the ovary specifically to make a really beautiful follicle. Now the follicle is where the maybe baby lives. It's only 1/2 of the baby, but it's the maybe baby, and it lives inside a follicle. So if you think of a follicle like a chicken egg, and you think of the chicken egg lives inside a sack. So what FSH is doing is it's telling that chicken egg to be nice, have a beautiful yolk, lots of wonderful white, everything is just, so perfect. So that's what's happening during that first half of the cycle. Now, the hormone that's dominant during that time is estrogen. So the healthier the follicle, AKA the chicken egg, the healthier the follicle, the healthier it is when it moves into the second half of the cycle. So what happens is there's this little bridge in here, this little transition. When this follicle gets launched, so we ovulate, a woman ovulates on around.
Did we lose her?
I think she froze for a minute there. So hopefully she'll come back in just a moment here. And that's it, because this is a really interesting part of understanding what happens when we start to change the progesterone in the body, because that little cell that she's about to describe there, the maybe baby part, is so linked in this perfect harmony in the way that the hormones and the human body work. The moment we start to mess with it, unfortunately, we are now playing the puppeteer. We're really starting to choose how things are going to kind of move around here. So I tell you what, while we're waiting to get Rhonda back here, if you guys have questions, she'll come back at some point, I'm sure. Make sure you guys are put them in the chat below. Make sure that we get them over here, and we'll make sure that Rhonda gets all these answered. So Rhonda, you back? Do you hear us again?
Yep, I got you. I just jumped back in on my phone.
Sweet. Welcome back.
So thanks. So what happens is on this follicle, my phone's going to be a little wiggly, but at least we're back. So what happens is this follicle, as it switches and it goes into that corpus luteum, what happens is if the follicle isn't healthy over here, then, and this is producing estrogen, then what happens over on this side is this corpus luteum produces progesterone. And so if this one isn't healthy, this estrogen producing structure, the follicle, then if it doesn't produce a lot of estrogen, and a lot of it is because of what's happening here, if that doesn't happen, then we can't get enough progesterone over here. So when a woman comes in and she says, oh, hey, I have low progesterone, I don't really care. What I care about is how healthy is the follicle on this side of the equation during this first 14 days. This is what I want to support. I don't care about this over here yet. I care about this over here. So I'm going to go use nutritional support, herbal support, whatever I need to do on this side to get this follicle healthy so that we can produce enough progesterone in the second half of the cycle. So women who opt to use progesterone are not fixing anything. They're only messing up this central switching station so that the communication gets all screwed up. You're gumming up the liver and you never did fix the follicle. And this is where the maybe baby lives. And so if you want to have a good, healthy cycle, then you've got to start with this side, not this side.
So let's go into that a little bit. When you want to start and you're trying to create that healthy cycle, what is this side? What are some of the things that are people listening tonight? What can they do?
So one of the things that you want to do is use the herb that we just talked about, which is chaste tree. Mm-hmm. Another one is wheat germ oil. So you already mentioned those two. Those are two of my very favorite things to use. And then I love using things that are going to fix this central switching station. Mm-hmm. So if you think of the ovaries are like when we were kids and we played red light, green light. And so you had to stop and be real still until somebody said green light, and then you could run. I know I'm dating myself a little bit here, but it's all right. So the ovaries are like that. They just sit still until they're told what to do. They're really kind of stupid, really. They just sit and they wait until they get the message from the central switching station. And that's the hypothalamus and the pituitary up here. And until these two work together and they tell the ovary what to do, the ovary is just going to sit and wait until it gets a command. That's all. So it's one thing to fix the ovary and to feed it, like using chaste tree and using wheat germ oil. But then we also have to think about, well, the ovary can have all the nutrients it wants, but until it gets the signal, i.e., okay, green light, go, and that comes from right here. Until that ovary gets the signal from here, it can't do anything. So we really want to make sure that we're fixing this up here. One of the minerals that I love using to fix the pituitary and the hypothalamus, well, two minerals. One is chromium, and the other one is manganese. So chromium and manganese, and those are two. If you can eat foods that are high in chromium and manganese, those are great ways to help to kind of reset this. And another thing is to manage stress, because stress will alter this communication, and it affects the ovaries as well.
All right, so let's go there for a moment to the stress, because I think. Anyone who's working in this world, stress is like this invisible but heavy loaded gun that really beats down anything in the human body, quite frankly. And I probably see this more in our women now, where we have women that, I don't know, Karen and I were talking earlier, and I think we think about our moms, and there wasn't a lot of talk about hormones, quite frankly. They just kind of went through it and they were done. Now, I would say that if I have a dozen, 45-year-olds in my clinic, there are a dozen women talking about hormones being out of balance right now.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe it's, women are doing more now than ever. You're obviously an entrepreneur, women are raised, they're doing everything right now. They're running the world, and the stress is the one that's having the impact. So let's take a little bit of curve here and talk a little bit about what are the foundation of our hormones. You've taught me this lesson years ago about that foundation. You drew a little pyramid here and you showed me that foundation here, because often we're shooting for things that are not on the foundation.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe talk a little about the foundation of our health, because then I want to go into walk down this road of going from almost like a normal cycling woman to perimenopause, to menopause. And how can we miss out having helipause? So let's hold that for a second. Yeah. So because this right here, to me, this is what drives my motivation to help the women understand this, because all I got to do is say, listen, helipause is very predictable.
Very predictable.
Yeah, very predictable.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back a little bit and talk about the foundation of our health, of our hormones. And this is male and female.
Okay. So if you, for those of you that are listening, I want you to think about it, or if you have a piece of paper, you can draw this out. It's like the easiest thing to remember, and it'll help guide you as you are starting to, like, when you're trying to figure out what might be going wrong, this will help you sort of figure out the puzzle. It's really the puzzle. So draw a triangle, okay? Just an equilateral triangle, which just means all three sides are completely equal. In the bottom left corner, you're going to write adrenal glands. In the bottom right corner, you write ovaries, or if you're a man, you would write testes. So either one goes there. And then the top point of the triangle up here at the top is the thyroid. Okay? So those are three very, very important glands as it has to do with reproduction, the testes, the ovaries, and of course the adrenal glands, and then the thyroid. So all three of these glands, 4 if you include the testes, they're all governed by the central switching station, the hypothalamus and the pituitary. So just like I said earlier, they're all really dumb in that they do not move unless they're told to move. They do not act. They don't release hormones. They don't do anything until they're told to do by what? Right here, the central switching station. So when the hypothalamus pituitary tell those ovaries or testes what to do, they do it. And the same thing is true with the adrenal glands. So when this central switching station up here, the body gets under stress and the brain goes, oh my gosh, there's a bear chasing her. She better run. And so these two little glands release hormones, and those hormones tell the adrenal glands to go into fight or flight so we can run from the bear or run from, a car accident, hit the brakes and divert and steer, and you got that adrenaline, you get that rush. There's a reason, though, that the adrenals and the ovaries are on the bottom of the triangle. And that's because, Bart, as you said, they form the foundation. These hormones, the adrenal hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, etc., these hormones on the adrenal side and the sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, all these hormones are in a family called steroid hormones. They all have the same mother and father. It's the same mother and father. And the same mother and father is cholesterol. So if you have a good amount of cholesterol, you'll be able to have good sex hormones and adrenal hormones. Perfect. But if you go with the conventional wisdom, which is that you should have cholesterol of like 5, that's an exaggeration, but very low, then you can't make these hormones. So when these hormones are in balance, the thyroid is happy. But when we get into stress over here on this side and the stress starts to tip, our triangle starts to lose its stability and we start to get out of whack. So when like the train that goes off the track. So when these hormones start to get wonky over on this side of the triangle, we can guarantee that something's going on with the adrenals because you can't affect one and not affect the other. It's like in a marriage. If I'm grumpy, who else is going to be grumpy in my house? My husband's going to be grumpy because I'm being mean, and vice versa. These two they play off of each other. So the stress plays a key role in fertility as it does when we move into perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, you just said a lot there that I want to comment on.
I'm sorry.
No, that's like it's all awesome, and I so want our listeners to be able to like walk away tonight and be like, okay, I got it. There's this big picture here when it comes to hormones. It's not just getting a test, and if it's low, making it high. It's really looking at this whole thing. I think the biggest tragedy right now in hormones is that I'd say the majority of the healthcare system just forgets about the adrenals, doesn't even address them. And what I've heard you say, you can't not address them. Because they're always going to be part of it. And I want our listeners, you guys have heard me talk about this before, that your adrenals are always in play with any type of hormone condition going on there. All right, so I want to back up just a step there. So let's back up that because you said the mother and father is all cholesterol. So what happens if a woman goes on a statin?
Well, then she's going to have low cholesterol, and therefore she's not going to be able to make adrenal hormones or sex hormones. So what that looks like in real life is she's not able to adapt to stress very well. So something might happen, intermarriage or with a kid or at work or life, like our world, the way that it is at the moment. We're in the middle of this COVID mess, and our ability to handle that kind of stress gets less and less and less and less. And when that happens, we start becoming a little meaner. We aren't nice anymore. We don't have the patience that we used to have. And that's because this whole thing is getting tippy. And then what you'll notice is that when you start having more stress, women will start seeing heavier menstrual bleeding. They'll start seeing more cramping. They'll start getting mid-cycle headaches, or they'll start having more PMS symptoms. And it's not that the hormones don't want to do a good job, because remember, they're just waiting to be told what to do. The problem is the body's prioritizing the stress response over having a normal cycle. So which do you think is more important? Not, committing murder of your 2-year-old? I'm kidding about that. Don't go quote me on the internet for saying that. But like, you're going to like go crazy and lose it with somebody, or have a libido.
Yeah.
Which one?
And I think that's just important for us to understand that our body is going to try more to protect us than it is care about our sex life, quite frankly. So
that's exactly right.
Here's going to be something I think is going to be real interesting to a lot of people listening, especially the women. So you talked about the ability to have a stress response and have a good, healthy, basically you're under stress, your adrenal glands, kick out some hormones so you can handle and manage that stress.
Yeah.
I like to think of that as our capacity.
Yes.
As we lower our capacity, but we're still under stress, what impact might that have on weight gain?
So that's such a great question, and it's such an important one to bring up, because when cortisol, that's the primary hormone that goes high when we get under stress. And if your listeners are like me, are sadly but true, we tend to be probably under a lot more stress than we should be. And when cortisol starts to go up, in other words, we're under stress and those hormones start to elevate, cortisol is a fat storing hormone. So when we are under stress, guess what's happening? We're just getting chubbier by the day. Like that crap's not going to go away. It's the fat girl party. And so the fat just starts to come on, and you'll notice like, I don't know what happened, but this month I gained like 2 pounds. No big deal, 2 pounds. But what happens in 3 months? It's now 6 pounds. And then 3 months more goes by, and now you're 10 or 12 pounds up. But your stress has been high because you're worried about COVID, and you're worried about your kids going back to school, and then you start emotional eating, and then we throw insulin into the mix, and now we've got blood sugar and cortisol, and these are all hormones. So remember the triangle, they all fit together. So to look at just one thing, it's probably not a good idea. But if you were going to pigeonhole me and say, if you had to choose one thing to address first for any woman who had like sex hormone dysregulation, hands down, 100%. You know what I'm going to say, don't you, Bart?
I do.
Hands down, 100% adrenal glands, 100% stress response every single time. Because remember the bottom of the triangle. If we fix this, we're going to have an impact on this side.
And you know what, Rhonda, and again, sadly, and that's why I think that the biggest tragedy in hormones is that we're not looking at the adrenal glands closely.
I agree. I so agree.
None of the women that are coming in that are going on HRT and stuff like that, have they been told about the adrenal glands, and the role that they're playing here. All right, so let's do this for a minute. I see a bunch of questions popping up. Karen, do you have some questions there? Can we, let's interact right here, and let's put Rhonda on the spot here.
All right, we've got a bunch of questions, lots of hormone questions. So let's just start going through them. We've kind of touched on some of these, but let's make sure they're answered. So Tanya writes, how do you know if your hormones are imbalanced if your labs are normal but you have symptoms?
Good question. That's a really good question. So there's 2 ways to look at hormones, and conventional Western medicine will always use blood to test those hormones, but that's an inadequate way, an actually outdated way of looking at them. There are some circumstances or situations where that would be okay based on what you're trying to look at. But if you think of different types of testing to get different kinds of information, A blood test looks at things in the blood. A urine test looks at things in the urine. A stool test looks at things that come in the stool. What we recommend for hormones, sex hormones, and adrenal hormones is saliva. So before assuming that your hormones are out of whack, I would always recommend having a saliva test done. Don't trust the blood test. And we don't have time to really get into it as to the why, but for sex hormones and adrenal hormones, saliva testing is your testing method of choice. So you want to evaluate them properly before you know whether there's a problem with them.
Yeah, awesome. And for people out there, I mean, Dr. Bart, you work with people virtually as well. Like if we're starting to talk about different tests and things, if they want to get tests like this, how would they access that?
That's easy. Just reach out to the office. Like we can send out those tests. So that's real simple. And especially what's nice, the tests that Ronda was just talking about, those are at-home tests. That's the beauty.
Right.
Of it. Literally, they're functional at-home tests. You spit in a bunch of vials, depends on what we're looking for, and you send them out, and we get the results usually in about a week, and then we can dive in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great test.
Yeah, we just sent an adrenal test over from the US to Australia to me. I'm like, I need to test mine. So we can literally send them anywhere in the world, guys. So let's move on to the next question is, do hormones affect cholesterol and or thyroid? And we kind of talked about that one.
So I don't know that they can affect, like thyroid hormones can affect cholesterol, but I think the better way to think about it is cholesterol is the mother and father of the sex hormones and the adrenal hormones. So don't think of it from the bottom of the triangle up to the mom and the dad. Think about the mom and the dad, i.e. the cholesterol, and how it's impacting the availability of those hormones, the ability of the body to make them.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, we've got a question from Jane. What about older women, like 52, that need birth control? What are your thoughts on IUD?
Oh man, we're getting some good questions here. So an IUD is, even if they tell you it's a non-hormonal IUD, that's not really truthful because the effect in the body is still the same. So when you use an IUD, it's basically the same thing in the way that it's messing with your hypothalamus pituitary, the switching station. It's still messing with that feedback. And so when you use an IUD, it's the same as using oral birth control. So if you're 52 and you want that kind of, conception protection, then I still would always recommend a condom because there are no hormonal side effects from a condom. Whereas you really do alter the way that the brain communicates to the ovaries, and then remember the triangle. If this is altered as it communicates with the ovaries, it's also going to not communicate well with the adrenals. It's not going to communicate well with the thyroid. So there's a lot more at play here than just not getting pregnant.
We had a couple of other questions on IUDs on Facebook, actually. I've got the Facebook questions here too, because we're live on Facebook today. And yeah, somebody else says, what about an IUD without hormones? Is that different or a healthier option? But you're saying it's the same.
It's basically the same thing. They'll make them out of copper. And the copper is actually prevents it basically when you graze copper, you're going to lower estrogen. And so it's sort of doing the same thing. Well, you're going to alter estrogen. Let's leave it at that. But the copper IUDs, they're quote not hormonal, but they're still having an hormonal effect in the body. So they're the same.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We had a few questions about, I think people don't realize that, when people are this as an option, they're given it as a non-hormonal disruptive option, right?
But if it didn't have a hormone disruption, then it wouldn't work, right? We would be pregnant. So it absolutely has a hormone disruption factor.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got a couple other ones. Lots of questions on this topic. So Annie asks, what are Rhonda's thoughts on DHEA levels and its role in our bodies, and can deficiencies in DHEA lead to inflammation?
That's a good question. So let's talk about where DHEA is made. If A, you've tested DHEA using saliva, okay, not blood. So that doesn't count because it's one of the, now sex hormones. DHEA is made in the adrenals. So we're going to call it an adrenal hormone. However, it's a precursor for the sex hormone. So see how this family kind of works together? It's an adrenal hormone, but it has a really strong impact over on this side on the ovaries or for male sex hormone production. So if you're deficient on a saliva test, then where would you need to go to improve DHEA levels? You would want to support what gland? The adrenal gland, because that's where DHEA is made. So sometimes women and men will go to over-the-counter DHEA and think, oh, well, my blood test says DHEA is low, so I'm just going to go take it. Well, that's like taking progesterone when you're supposedly progesterone low. That's not the problem. The problem isn't the deficiency. The problem is, why did the deficiency occur? And let's go fix the why. So when DHEA is low, then we want to go fix the adrenals. Now, whether DHEA contributes to inflammation or not, I would not be able to say that one way or the other, because there's going to be other extenuating factors that might drive inflammation. But as a single player, I would not, for me clinically, and Bart, I don't know about you, but if I saw someone with a low DHEA, I would not automatically think inflammation. Would you?
Not inflammation. I would definitely think that the adrenal glands are getting beat.
Correct. Yeah, right.
And I think that's actually what I love about everything I hear that we talk about here. We always go to, like, sorry, excuse me, what's actually happening? You know, so often people, or things even I've heard in the past, you know, okay, DHEA is low, so let's take that. Whereas what we're talking about here is actually finding why. Why is DHEA low, right? Or high, or whatever. Let's get to the root cause behind it. So I love that. Okay, I've got a long question from Emily here, who wrote in. Emily actually just joined our 30-day challenge too. She wrote in, excited about that. So guys, this is the last week to register for our 30-day challenge as well. We'll put the link in the chat if you want to know more about that, because we start Monday. But anyway, Emily writes, this is a timely topic with me as I've just hit 50 and I'm feeling the emotional roller coaster of perimenopause. Mm-hmm. I have been to a new local doctor for blood work and discovered I have low testosterone, so she prescribed a cream. Is a cream or pellet better? Are there any other options? How can I regulate through this time? And she's got some other parts. So that's kind of the first part. Also, will exercise affect hormones? And what type of supplements should I take and why?
So, Bart, it's okay. So Emily, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for the really great question. It's a long question, but I think the first part of the answer to the first part of your question about testosterone, just make sure you're sitting down. Am I right, Bart?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So hormones are supposed to be made in the body. Mm-hmm. That's how we're made. There is no way to synthesize a true bioidentical hormone outside the body in the lab. So when they use blood tests to test your hormones, we've already talked about how that's an inefficient way to test. We always want to look at saliva. But they use a blood test, and we can't go into the why, but just you got to trust that this is the truth. It's right. But when you use a blood test to look at testosterone and it's low, conventional thought is, well, let's just give you testosterone. Okay, I don't agree. Dr. Bart doesn't agree. We would not do that. But let's just say, so you say, okay, I'm going to go on a cream. All right, fine. So you're going to may feel a little bit better. And my opinion, using testosterone for women is always a dead end street. I have never seen a good use for testosterone in women ever. But you're on testosterone. This is just the first part of the problem. The bigger problem is this, especially with the creams. When you put a cream on the skin, even if you're rotating the location of application, when you put a cream on the skin, it goes into the skin and then it builds up in the skin. And it accumulates in the fatty tissue in the skin, and it gets picked up in the lymphatic system, and it kind of soaks around the outside of the cell. If you think of a cell like a little jelly bean that's in like this, fluid. There's a whole bunch of them, millions in there. All the fluid that surrounds the jelly bean is also saturated in testosterone, and it just increases and it increases and it increases. Well, the bad part is that testosterone doesn't stay there. When you get next to someone, especially if you have a spouse, significant other, your children, when you touch them with your skin, your hands, your arm, you hug someone, you're cozying up with your spouse in bed, and you're all curling up next to each other under the covers, and you start to sweat, which is what we do. And I'm not talking about having sex. I'm just talking about just natural being under the covers, two bodies, it's going to get warm. When you sweat, that testosterone leaks out of the skin and it is transferred into your spouse.
Oh, wow.
So now your testosterone, you're now giving it to your spouse. That's called passive transfer. And if you ever want to know how testosterone affects women, go look for the episode of House. So House is a TV series. You can Google it. Go look at House and then type in testosterone, and you'll find the episode. And the whole episode of the show, and these are well medically researched shows, it's all medical, but the whole episode was about the effect of a man using a testosterone cream, how it affected his girlfriend and his children in very negative ways. And at the end of the show, they figure out that it's this passive transfer that's happening. So when we use hormones, we are never using hormones for just us. I guess if you lived in a bubble, maybe, but we don't, right? We interact with people. It's the same whether if it's a progesterone cream. It's the same if it's an estrogen cream. Even the orals can do that, but the creams are the worst. So what happens is your husband starts to get testosterone because you're giving it to him inadvertently, and give him 6 months and he's going to start getting angry. He's going to start having some emotional stuff going on. You, because you're taking it, you're also going to get a little bit angry. You're not going to be the nice, soft, fluffy, female type person that you used to be. You're going to start getting mad at stuff that you would have never been mad about before, because that level of testosterone is not meant to be in our bodies. Those hormones are meant to be made internally. So if we have a deficiency, we want to support the gland that's supposed to make that hormone, which in women is the ovaries. So if there is truly low testosterone in a woman, which is extremely rare, but if there is, where we want to go is support the adrenals and the ovaries right here. We want to look at the base of the triangle. So darling, I don't know you, but I would say to you, get off that testosterone as fast as you can, because there is no good reason for you to be on it. And then get tested the right way using saliva to find out if it's really even an issue. But the creams are the worst across the table.
Wow, I had no idea about creams like that passive transfer was a thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big thing. Go watch the episode of House. It's very telling.
Yeah.
One of the first times that I got exposure to that was I was doing a saliva test, adrenal test on a male, and his testosterone was through the roof. And I was like, all right, brother, what's going on? And he said, no. And because I kind of knew this conversation, I asked, is your wife on testosterone cream? He said, yeah. And sure enough, he had these super, super high testosterone levels. Yep. And it was real. It was an eye opener that it really, I'm glad that we were able to test that way. All right, Karen, we got any others here? Because I certainly do.
All right. Well, just quickly, what about the exercise? Does exercise affect hormones?
Well, yes, it will, because when you exercise, you're going to be able to release some of that cortisol. When you start to get this in balance, your body's always going to feel better when it's in balance rather than when it's doing this all the time. And exercise can really help that. So yes, exercise has a very positive impact on hormones, but more on the stress hormone side.
I think I want to add to that exercise part. I literally just had a client today who I had to take her off a lot of her exercise.
Agreed. Oh yes, agreed.
Yeah, and this, ladies, I hope you hear me correctly when I say this. So this girl came in, sweetheart, really clean diet, doing a lot of good things, working out 6 to 7 days a week. Ladies, that is not okay. If you're a professional athlete, that is fine. But to train, and especially if you're thinking that it's going to help you to lose weight, and listen, I got it. And I sympathize for her, but at the same time, I said, you watch what happens here. If you stop putting all that stress into your body, you'll naturally just start to lose weight, because stress doesn't discriminate. Whether it's coming from, toxins, or it's coming from emotional stress or physical stress, we can still produce the same exact hormone that's going to add that weight. Yeah. So
agreed. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I gotta, you got another one, Karen?
Oh, they're coming in thick fast on Facebook here. Do yours first, or should we answer a couple
No,
more?
Go ahead. Keep rolling.
Keep coming. All right. Dory says, I'm in helipause with hot flashes. I'm in helipause. I've eaten a keto lifestyle for 2 years and lost 118 pounds, but I can't find. Yeah, Dory, well done.
Go girl.
But I can't find anything that helps. Rapid hot flashes are extremely uncomfortable. Any advice?
Well, I'm with you, sister, and I feel your pain. So been there, done that, still have them once in a while, and they really are miserable, and you really can't even get out of your skin. You know the best way to describe a hot flash is if you were in a down parka that goes from your ankles all the way up, and it's the hood that comes over your head, and the only thing that's showing is your eyeballs, and you're in the middle of Alaska, where it's like, it's minus 100.
Yeah.
What a hot flash feels like is someone lights that coat on fire and you can't get out of it. Am I right? I would get a whole bunch of amens in the comments. I'm telling you, that's for us menopausal women. That's exactly what it feels like.
Give us some amen in the comments.
I did. I know I will. I so know it. It's what happens. So for menopause and those hot flashes, what happens is if your body is, if this gets imbalanced, that's what happens really in menopause. When this is steady in menopause, helipause doesn't happen. Sorry, ladies, but it's true. And I have to own my stuff too. When it gets imbalanced and those adrenal glands start getting flat, in other words, our ability to produce cortisol and all those wonderful hormones that help us adapt to stress, when this starts to get flat before we go into menopause, then that's how the hot flashes show up. So there are multiple ways to get rid of those hot flashes, and it depends really on how that hormone pathway is running. But I will tell you this, not surprisingly, guess what has a big role in them? It's right here. This central switching station gets all screwed up because of high levels of stress over our whole lives, because we're women and we want to care for everyone and find every little stray puppy, and we want to take care of everyone. Or on the flip side, we just want to chop everybody's head off all the time because we're A-type people and we just want to be barky and oochy. And so what happened, we're on one side or the other of the spectrum, but it's still all stress. And so when that stress builds up over time, the triangle gets wonky. And then when the ovaries, this on this side, when these guys stop producing, then it only exacerbates and aggravates and accelerates our inability to cope with stress, because your adrenal glands are your backup system in menopause. So the more severe the hormone symptoms that you're having, it's a telling indicator of the severity of your adrenal insufficiency, i.e. your body's not making those hormones like it needs to, or it's not getting the signal. So one of the ways you can fix it is by supporting that hypothalamus gland in the brain.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping everyone is starting to really get this through, that the adrenal glands, menopause,
Yes.
And we've known each other for a long time, so I know why you have your hot flashes now. But you've made some nice life changes. When I first met you, you were traveling 42 weekends a year, and I know that's not the gig anymore. So at some point, you got to, we have to look at the big picture and be like, something's got to change. But I will tell you, just like Ronda was just saying there, if you're in helipause, it's because you went into that situation when your body was making those transitions, and in that transition, your adrenals were already toast. That's my simple way.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, they were already toast. So with that being said, if you are out there right now and you are a cycling woman, there's a couple things I know. At some point, your body will transition. It's going to move on. Now we have this category we call perimenopause, when things are just a little wonky. But if you are a cycling woman, the time to start taking care of your adrenals is right
now. Exactly. Yep.
Yes.
Yes. I think we all need to hear that over
Yeah.
and over again, for sure. Okay. This is kind of, I mean, a lot of similar questions, but okay, what about menopause and women that, so this is Amy. Amy writes, what about menopause and women that are approaching 50 and are seeing mental changes in ourselves that we don't like? What testing should we have?
Ooh.
What supplements should we start to take into this era of our life if possible?
Woohoo! I like this question. This is a good one because the period of time that you're talking about, Amy, is called perimenopause. And it lasts, the whole process for most women is about a 10-year process. Now, don't shoot the messenger. I didn't make this up, but it's just the way it is. And the early first 2-3 years, there's very few symptoms. But what's happening is, as the ovaries start to decrease the amount of estrogen they're producing because there's not as many good follicles, and you're kind of playing with like 4th, 5th, 6th string players. Like they really were never good enough. These eggs were never good enough to make the grade or the cut. And so they just don't produce as many hormones. And so as that starts to happen, we start to notice emotional changes. It's one of the very first changes that women notice. And it can just be depression for no reason. Like I have no reason to not love my life, but I'm not loving my life right now. And I'm not happy and I don't know why. And it's frustrating because our lives could be awesome, but we just have that blue funk going on. And that's the early signs that you're in that menopause or that perimenopausal kind of transition where you're not quite done releasing those eggs every month, but you're still kind of doing it, but not really. And so it's a hit or miss type deal. So one of the best herbs that I love using, and Bart, like chime in for what you like to use, but I love using chaste tree. I call chaste tree the bridge hormone. The bridge herb. So it takes you from reproductive years. It's great for reproductive age women, but it bridges that gap really nicely over into menopause. Chaste tree is not the right herb to use in menopause, but it's a great herb to use on the bridge.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Honestly, without even histories, I would gladly put every woman on chaste tree right up.
Me too.
Right up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no questions. Just go on it. You'll just be better. And
Feel better.
That one too, Rhonda. My experience is that it doesn't take much. Usually 1 or 2 in the morning. Often is enough there, and that's the beauty of that herb.
Yep. And the other thing that chaste tree can do too is it can help with sleep. So sometimes insomnia starts to kind of pick up during those perimenopausal years, and you'll start to have nights or a week where you just don't sleep good, and then you'll go back to sleeping really good. And for some women, once they move into menopause, sleep can be more of an issue, and we have to deal with that differently in menopause. But during reproductive years and perimenopause, chaste tree is a home run. 1 to 2 a day. I totally agree.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and we put the link to chaste tree if you guys want to make sure that you can check that out in the chat and in Facebook as well. All right, I know we're running out of time. People have a lot of questions on this topic, which we so appreciate you answering them, Rhonda.
No
Some
problem.
of these might be a little bit faster. Greta writes, hormone cream any better than pill form? I think we've answered that one. Do you suggest no HRT at all, as both have negative impacts on your adrenal?
Yep, I'm going to say 0, 0, and 0 HRT. Yeah. There are so many other ways to fix the problem, and HRT doesn't fix anything. It just makes your man meaner, and if your man is on hormones, it makes you meaner.
Yeah.
There's no win.
Yeah. And let's go with the last one here. Annie writes, I'm pretty much depleted of DHEA at age 50. My blood work shows blood work 21, I think. I've been taking DHA for a month now, and now I'm at 230. Supplementing okay, or should I do it through diet? I think we answered that one kind of too, right?
Yeah. So you wouldn't want to, Annie, honey, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm not your practitioner, but I would say if it was me, I wouldn't supplement with DHE for anything, because what happens is you will see a response on a blood test, but then this is what will happen. You can keep going. You just go with it, sister. But give it 3 months, maybe 4 months, and you're going to start feeling bad again. And that's because your cells have receptors for DHEA. And when those receptors they're dry. because the adrenal glands aren't producing the DHEA. But you bypass that by supplementing with it. You didn't fix the adrenals. You just went straight to the, Walgreens and picked yourself up some DHEA or wherever you got it. And so you start with the DHEA. The cell receptors are like dry in the desert, and they are going to drink up that DHEA so fast. They're, oh, finally, we have a little bit of hormone. It's not because you had a Walgreens deficiency. Yeah. It's because the adrenal glands aren't doing what they're supposed to. But you use the DHEA, and your cell receptors for DHEA just drink it up. And so for the first 2 or 3 months, whoop, whoop, you're going to feel like Superwoman. You're going to feel so much better. But what happens is now you keep the fire hose going. You keep dripping it in, dripping it in, dripping it in every day. You take it. Pretty soon what happens is those cell receptors start to drown. And they get overwhelmed with the amount of DHEA. And you don't know this because you're using a synthetic hormone outside the body, putting it in your body. You don't know what's happening to those cell receptors, but they're starting to drown. And when those cell receptors drown, we would do the same thing. When we start feeling like we're drowning, what do? We're going to run away. We're going to go away. We're going to get away from that thing that's making us feel like we're drowning. And that's what the cell receptors do. They'll start to downregulate, or they'll start to diminish. They'll start to curl in. And now you have all this DHEA rolling around outside your jelly bean, and you're basically flooding those cell receptors. And in about 3 months or so, you're going to start feeling bad again, because now the DHEA can't get into the cell because the receptors, you're drowning them. So you cannot give me, I would say there's one exception, but and I'll tell you in a minute, but I have not done this for so many years. Cannot find one good reason for a woman to ever use any hormone ever, except for this one exception. Bart, can I tell?
You can.
He knows what I'm going to say.
I know what you're going to say.
My one exception is for menopausal women that have vaginal dryness. It's my one exception, but there's a rule with it. And that is, you use a certain type of vaginal suppository that has a very safe type of estrogen that will not contribute to or cause any kind of cancer. So it's safe to use, but you have to titrate it, meaning that we don't use it every day, because again, we don't want to drown the receptors. But when you use it for a few weeks and then you start to titrate down, which means you reduce the dose, most women can use one of those suppositories about once a week, and the vaginal dryness is completely resolved. And it's safe and easy to do. That is the only exception for me. But to do creams and pellets and oral and all that, I'm out. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I think that when we keep circling around there, it always just kind of keeps rolling back. The DHEA question is a great one, because for clinicians, it shows up on blood work all the time. I have people bring that in for us, and show me the labs that it's down low here and then now it's up high, but they're still having, challenges. So I think for our listeners, just to, take a step back and think about, what is the fix? Like, are we fixing what made it go bad? And then it really goes back to the adrenals. And the nice thing is, especially now, Rhonda, there's so many good strategies with adrenal support, and especially if we do take a test, we don't need it, quite frankly. At least I don't think at this point I need it. But when we have those tests, you can really strategize what herb for how long a period of time. What glandulars, it's kind of really been dialed in, I think, over these last 5, 6, 7 years, where people can get really good results, doing things a natural way, where before they just weren't approached this way. Right.
I agree.
Yeah, Karen, you got any good last questions for Karen? We always try to our time here. So, I guess one more thing I just like kind of say, maybe for all listeners to keep this in mind. And when we're thinking about hormone balance, is that think of this multifaceted approach. I started off earlier saying that years ago with infertility, I'd just be able to give someone an adjustment. Literally, they'd go home because we take them out of a stress state, relax them, they'd get pregnant. It's different now, because
so different.
because the chemicals are here, because the exogenous estrogens that are coming into the body, the adrenal glands are getting toast. So this multifaceted approach is really the direction you want to take. And don't be nervous of it. And, and again, I'd be happy to help anyone, and there's so many good practitioners right now. I think that's what I'm saying, that know this work right here to help people out. So you don't have to go at it by yourself. And I think that's often where people try to do it, and they make some wonderful changes, but they don't just approach the entire thing here, which, right. So kind of a cheap plug for our 30-day challenge that's coming up. That's what we're kind of doing. We're approaching it all. So Ron, I didn't tell you about it, but we're doing a 30-day challenge starting next week. And it's literally about how you move, how you eat, how you think. And we're approaching a little bit of everything, and no longer just saying we're just going to cleanse, but really taking this full holistic, whole body spirit approach, because right now this whole COVID thing and, all this stuff that's going on, we got to get this right too. Like how many we got to really approach this for this full holistic approach. All right. With that being said, this has been awesome. Like this is exactly what I wanted you here for. I wanted you to just kind of help these listeners kind of like have this aha moment, but also be confident. And that's what I want to take away, that it's not actually that difficult. I want to say that it's actually a lot simpler than we think.
Yes, I agree. Yep. It's not hard. And what do we start with first? Always the adrenal glands.
Yes.
Woo!
Yes. All right. So Rhonda, we always have a super question for you at the end of this. So Karen's got a question for you, and then we're going to wrap it up because we always try to stay on time. We're a little late, but that means you are super special, Rhonda.
You are
thanks.
super special. We just had too many people wanting to ask you questions. But the last question we always ask, we like to make health simple. And we would love to know, what is one action that our listeners tonight can take to move them towards their goal of becoming superhuman? So superhuman for us is the best version of themselves.
So I would say that the number one thing, because especially as it has to do with hormones, the number one thing for me that's going to have the biggest impact on hormones, that's going to require the least amount of time, it's free, and it's something that you could do and carry on as a habit for the rest of your life. And that is by incorporating, start with a 10-minute meditation every single day. And you use an app if you want to. You can put on some chill music if that's what your jam is, whatever it is, but sit your butt down for 10 minutes and just stop the chatter. And by doing that, you bring your body into a place, we call it into the parasympathetic state, where we get that calm state. And when we're calm, what's happening here? There's no more flutter. Everything's still, gets real still. And that's when your brain gets still and this gets still. And then that communication can start to wake up. And you can do that. And Bart can guide you. He's like a master meditator. I wish I was like him, but I'm not. I'm a wannabe. But that would be my one tip. Start with 10 minutes. You can waste 10 minutes on Facebook so fast. So just think about your 10-minute Facebook binge and just do it meditation. And it's a game changer for women.
We love that. That's an awesome one, and something everybody can implement right away. So
right.
Thank you so much again. And thanks everybody who's listening in. We are here the same time next week. And I've also put the link to drbartchallenge.com. We start on Monday, so you have to register before then. And yeah, we're just so grateful to have had you on, Ronda.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I love it.
Well, Rhonda, I appreciate you. I love you. I'm here for you if I can do anything. I think you dropped like bombs of just like value tonight. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for all that you've been for me, quite frankly.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. I love you. And if I can ever be there for you, let me know. If you want to come on down here to Florida, we'd love to have you visiting. I know having you to the boat up in, where are you again? It's
Seattle. I'm sitting at the base of the Space Needle. I can see it out my window right now. So yeah, beautiful here.
And then of course to all the listeners, thanks for being here. Keep spreading it out, keep sharing the love. And obviously we're going to keep doing the thing, keep, deliberate action for our mind, for our body, for overall wellness. Be all awesome.
All right. Take care. Thank you.